Welcome, class. Dr. Rosie here. So, today I'm going to discuss writing the argumentative essay. Technically, we are not writing an essay in this class. You're actually doing a presentation, preparing a PowerPoint presentation. But I thought I would show you how to put the essay together because basically you're going to need the same parts to put your presentation together. And again, this is a PowerPoint that I had received from my good friend, Professor Valentino, and I've taken it and added things to it. However, I always acknowledge her. So thank you, Professor Valentino. So here we go. Back to the same thing. Got to choose the topic. Make sure it's debatable. You have to take a position. It has to be an argument. You know, an argument is an argument. We get into plenty of them. You know, there's lots of things to argue out there. I do have certain taboo topics, and I believe I have listed them in the classroom. I think one of them is marijuana. I don't want an essay on marijuana or a presentation on marijuana. That's a done deal. Gay marriage, done deal. We don't argue that. Abortion, again, that's a religious issue. It's not really a true argument because it just depends on which side of the pendulum you stand. I don't want essays on gun control because that's almost like an oxymoron. And I believe there was one other, and that is the death penalty. So other than that, you can choose your topic, and you're going to get your topic approved. So you will send that to me in, I believe it's in week 12, but you'll have to check that to be sure. So let's just talk exactly about how to put this together. So it must be debatable and you must take a position. You can't be on the fence. You have to either be on this side or that side. You can't be in the middle. So you have to explore the topic, state a fact, rephrase it to make it a debatable question, and then tell one side of the argument. That's how you sort of start the process of the argumentative essay. And then you tell the opposing side. It's absolutely imperative that you tell the opposing side because you can't have a one-sided argument because then it becomes a one-sided argument. You have to tell the opposite side. So let's explore the topic a little bit. And this again is when you're exploring the topic this way, you're actually developing a thesis statement. That's where we're going. So here's a fact. People have wild animals as pets, and they definitely do. So I guess the question is, should people have wild animals as pets? Now, one side is people should be allowed. The other side, people should not be allowed. Now, if you were one of those people that has huge snakes in your apartment or home, or if you have a tiger or a lizard, or, I don't know, a lion, these are wild animals. So you have to make a decision. Obviously, if you have them, then your side is that people should be allowed. And if you do not, and you are opposed to it, then people should not be allowed. So you need to consider all the sides. You need to consider the pros and cons. And the best way to investigate the pros and cons is to look at the 5 W's and the H. And what are they? Who, what, where, when, why, and how. These are the questions that reporters ask. And then you apply the RENS technique. Now, RENS is an acronym, and it stands for reasons, examples, names, numbers, and senses. I hope you got all the R, the E, the N, the N, and the S. And when you're applying the RENS technique, you're finding the reasons, you're giving examples, you're using names, numbers. Now, obviously, when I said reasons, examples, names, and numbers, immediately you should realize that yes, we have to use outside sources. And I believe the number is 3. You have to use outside sources to support what you're saying. Now we need outside sources because we need to validate what we are thinking. And that's why we use outside sources. So developing your thesis. The thesis is your position and includes the reason why. So let's say your position is that people should not be allowed to own wild animals as pets. You're adamant about this. And the reason is, obviously, it's dangerous for animals and for people. So, using this, the position and the reason, combining the two, we can have a solid thesis. So check it out. People should not be allowed to own wild animals as pets because it can cause a potential danger to both the animals and people. This is just another way of saying it, kind of rewording it to eliminate dangerous situations for both animals and people. Owning a wild animal as a pet should be illegal. Okay? Notice it's a statement, both of them statements. There's a period at the end, not a question, so it's not a question. It's 25 words or less, and it will express the main idea of the essay. This essay, if you use either thesis, will definitely examine the reasons why one should not, the dangers of keeping wild animals as pets. Okay, so how do you set this up? Well, we're going to use the classical argument style, and that means that the introduction, paragraph 1, will show both sides, background information, and it ends with the thesis statement. Now, this obviously is if you were writing an essay, but I am also going to do a recording for the actual PowerPoint presentation, the way I set it up for you to present, and you will see that this information definitely translates to that. The next paragraph or slide is your opposition. Now, this is the opposing view, supported by details, evidence, and reason. And in our case, it would be people should be allowed because wild animals are not wild. They can be tamed. Okay, so that would be the opposition. Deal with the opposition first. Next is the refutation. That is the counterattack to the opposition's details, evidence, and reasons. So you're going to counterattack what you have up here. And that will be in paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. In our case, because you are doing a presentation, that will be on 3 different slides. And then you have the conclusion, which is your last paragraph or your last slide. Okay, and that's where you summarize the argument, restate your position and why, and you call the reader to action. So that's basically how this is set up. If you were doing an argument essay, this is how it's set up. And basically the slides will follow this same setup. Of course, I didn't include the last slide, which would be, or the last page, which would be the works cited page, but that's not for this presentation. So what's the point of this? You need to appeal to your audience. You know that in any argument, unless you appeal to the audience, it doesn't work. There are 3 types of appeals. The logical appeal, which is logic. This makes sense. It makes sense. It's logical that a wild animal is wild and eventually will attack you. The other is the emotional appeal. Oh my goodness, what will happen to your family, to your children, to your animals if this wild animal decides one day to be wild and to be what he or she was set to be and starts to rip apart your family? That's the emotional appeal. What's going to happen to your family? Will they die? Will they be scarred for life? And then, of course, the ethical appeal. You have to appeal to the ethics. The ethics of this is how wild animals belong where they are supposed to be, and that's in the wild. And that's the ethical situation. I mean, ethically, it's not right to take them out of their environment and put them into your environment. Okay, so a balanced argument uses all of these 3 techniques to persuade the audience. So make sure when you're doing the revision and the proofreading and all of those steps that you are checking to make sure that you have these 3 appeals in your essay. And then you could do this style of inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. I'm not really going to go into this much, but it's a way of supporting what you're saying. And in our readings, this is really explained a lot better. So I'm kind of going to skip this slide and end up with this slide because I truly believe that you have to be fair. Don't insult the opposition. Think about your word choice and the connotation of your words. Be assertive, be courteous, watch your tone. And all of these things will establish your credibility and will make your argument stronger. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end. Bye-bye for now.